Hello. These stories are from Pat Eadies' diaries. This is called A Valley Too Far, and of course he was a very well-known West Coaster. We're talking about Larry Zambezi and going into the priesthood. Terminating his flying career, he swapped his Aer Lingus uniform for the black cassock. He had an unofficial understanding that he could have free travel back and forth, Rome to Dublin on Aer Lingus, while still a Beda student. A fact not overlooked by Larry, but not understood by others, was that the occupation, while in a missionary country, had never been defined. Other students became assistants in some African or South American parish and supplemented their funds by taxi driving during the night and or similar labour-intensive experiences. Larry, on the other hand, found that Ireland was still classified as a mission country. Once back there for his first vacation, with his gift of the gab, the operations director of Aer Lingus welcomed him on their payroll. The only Aer Lingus DC-3s flying were freighters. Even so, a position was made for him. As Larry titled the Beda College a charitable institution, the Irish Inland Revenue granted that his earnings be tax-free, the only Aer Lingus employee ever paid on a tax-free basis. This left Larry a handsome balance after paying the college fees when the other impoverished students returned after their vacation. And in Rome, a few years later, Larry was well established into his course. I had been introduced to his fellow students, his housemaster, and the college rector. There seemed no restriction on students' movements after study hours, in contrast to the other colleges in Rome, where the students were treated in a medieval tutorial fashion. One evening when I was night stopping Rome, Larry, Father Miles O'Malley, then a 7-year student, and a tall civilian dressed stranger arranged to meet at the usual wine shop in the street behind the Quirinale Hotel. The stranger realised I didn't recognise him and broached the subject of primary and secondary schools. Much to my surprise, he turned out to be Archbishop McKeithry. I felt really honoured. Instead of the usual formal meeting of a bishop, I was to address him as Mac. Larry, Self and Mac had all attended the same school in Greymouth, New Zealand. Where did I go wrong was quite an acceptable feeling at the time. The beginning of the third year for Larry at Beda almost did not happen. Whereas the British crews night stopping Rome were paid allowances in local currency with accommodation supplied, the Aer Lingus crews were given a total funding in lira to cover their accommodation and living allowances. For a period of 5 months, Larry's friends in Aer Lingus, night stopping Rome, unofficially used the spare beds in Larry's dormitory at the college. This came to the rector's notice when a wild party, hosted by a few inebriated Aer Lingus crew, was deemed not in keeping with the college's ambience. Larry's flying for Aer Lingus during the vacations had a bearing on him being suspended. Even so, he took the end of second-year examinations. Larry left Beda that year with his marching orders. Returning to Dublin, he recommenced flying. The Aer Lingus managing director considered Larry was being blamed for the activities of undisciplined aircrew. He appealed on Larry's behalf to complete the course. After the rector's meeting with the managing director in Rome, Larry was reinstated. Aer Lingus crews were compelled by management to operate to Rome and back to Dublin as a 2-sector, 13-hour duty day. This reduced allowances apropos no stopover in Rome. It penalised aircrew and cabin staff for the unofficial night stopping and carousal. Year 3 was a very quiet and studious as Larry approached the end of his course, which he passed in style. What style must be open to question. When it came to his ordination, 3 viscounts loaded with Aer Lingus staff left Dublin that morning for the ceremony and returned to Dublin the same day, giving no chance of a repeat party fiasco. 2 days later, Father Larry Zambezi again went solo, saying his first Mass in the Epileptic Colony Chapel, not a mile from our family home in Chalfont, St. Peter. John, my eldest son of primary school age, acted as his altar boy for this unique event, with only my family attending. His stay was brief prior to boarding the Aer Lingus Viscount at Heathrow for Dublin. On Archbishop McKeefery's instructions, he was given sufficient latitude to renew his flying licences with Aer Lingus for whatever short time that might take. Father Zambezi caught the headlines in the Dublin Times when he blessed all the aircraft in the Aer Lingus fleet individually. He officiated at the special High Mass for their ex-employees who had died. Real tear-jerking stuff, tailor-made for journalistic lineage. His departure from Dublin was ordered from Wellington, rather than requested, and 3 days later Father Larry arrived at his temporal home in the New Zealand capital. Reports that Larry very much at 6s and 7s with the clergy in Wellington. Within 12 months of him starting his parochial duties, he accepted a missionary position in New Guinea. This called upon his piloting qualifications, attending parish duties in the far-flung reaches of Papua New Guinea, once again in a small aircraft. Barely 12 months as a missionary priest, he ended up trying to squeeze through another cloud-shrouded valley in a New Guinea highland pass. On hearing of his terminal swipe at the mountains, I couldn't help feeling that as he had inadvertently saved my life, we had formed an aviator's bond. One thing for certain was that earlier experiences had not eroded the papal infallibility of which Larry thought he was blessed. Perhaps he was. 32 years on, I still have the same feeling about Italian pilots. Better they keep a paintbrush in their hands or the transparent Italian embellishments on their lips, rather than encompass the yoke in an aircraft cockpit. His final resting place is in Papua New Guinea. His death registered on his parents' headstone in the Greymouth Cemetery. In my reckoning, in that highland valley in Papua New Guinea, he got his brain around in nomine patris, but I don't think he got as far as Deo gratis. Cheerio.